Dulce Et Decorum Est by Wilfred Owen. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on bloodshod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of disappointed shells that dropped behind. Gas, gas, quick boys, an ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime, dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him, drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If, in some smothering dreams, you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, Dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. In this poem, Wilfred Owen is challenging his readers to think critically about the war that he was a part of, World War I. He does this using a variety of literary devices, including irony, diction, hyperbole, simile, and other kinds of figurative language, and we're going to walk through those today. But it all begins with a little bit of Latin. Latin's an interesting choice as diction, because with Latin comes a little bit of a pretension. I think people sound smart when they use words like alma mater, or ad nauseum, or carpe diem. And so Wilfred Owen chooses the phrase dulce et decorum est, something that means it is sweet and honorable, as the title for his poem. And with that comes a level of pretension that seems to fit the propaganda of World War I, where this poem was written and what it was written about. And then he turns to images, and they are powerful images. It starts off with a very realistic image of soldiers walking through the mud. We hear they cursed through sludge. And so this very dramatic image of soldiers struggling through wartime is how Owen begins his poem. But then he also sprinkles in some hyperbole. It's not a true image. He exaggerates things. At one point he says, all went lame. Now obviously they didn't all go lame, but he's exaggerating for a purpose to show how terrible things are. And he follows that up with all blind. Now, it would be impossible for all the soldiers to have all gone blind. He's exaggerating the challenges that many of these soldiers may have lived through as they were fighting. And then he dabbles in some simile. Simile, a comparison using like or as, and the first of which he refers to the soldiers as old beggars under sacks. And that simile is profound because it takes this image of a glorious, brave soldier and turns him into a humble beggar. And then he furthers that with a second simile where he says, coughing like hags. Hags being old women serves as a simile to show the emasculation that war would have on these soldiers, which were predominantly male at the time. And so that image, like hags, becomes a powerful one for him as well. And then we get into the story, and this is a narrative poem. For the most part, he's telling the story of a gas attack. And so we get this image of gas hitting a troop as they are out fighting. And at the very beginning of that gas attack, in the writing, it has a very onomatopoeic quality to it. It's not typical onomatopoeia. I don't know if it's the perfect use of the word, but the pacing of this verse speeds up in the way that I would imagine the entire situation sped up as the soldiers were fumbling to try to get on gas masks and simply survive an attack of Agent Orange. He finishes that very fast-paced stanza, filled with dashes and commas and enjambment in order to speed the reader along, with a stanza break. And then he delivers a line which is very unpoetic, filled with guttural sounds and hard consonants. Guttering, choking, drowning. And he does this to describe the one man in the troupe who did not get his gas mask up in time. And so we get an image of one gentleman dying due to the gas attack. In order to emphasize just how difficult this was to see and to be a part of, Owens goes back to simile. The first simile he uses, he says he's like a man in fire or lime, two of the most painful and horrible ways I can imagine to die, burning to death, whether that's chemical burn or fire burn. And he follows it up with like a devil's sick of sin. Perhaps some more hyperbole here, as things have to be pretty bad for the devil to be sick of sin. He then uses a word very intentionally that everyone in his audience would have negative connotations toward. He says it's as cancer. Strong word choice there, which immediately creates some pathos in his readers. And then he finishes it up with just the gross image, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. Not a pleasant thing to think about or to picture. And he does all this in order to create tone. Owens is critical of the war, critical of the way that these men are being forced to fight and what they're being forced to live through. And that comes back to his title and the final line of his poem, Dulce Et Decorum Est Pro Patria Mori. Once again, Owen is choosing his words very carefully here. They're Latin. They come with a level of pretension. It is a phrase that his readers would be familiar with. In fact, you could call it an allusion to something that they would have all learned as British schoolboys growing up. It means it is sweet and honorable to die for one's country. And what Owens is doing is really asking his readers to think and to ask themselves, is this sweet and honorable? And the answer, of course, is no. There is nothing sweet and honorable about what he saw during World War I. And so the final literary device, and perhaps the most profound one of all, irony. Owens creates a poem, Dulce Et Decorum Est. It is sweet and honorable as a way to criticize the things that he sees during World War I. A wonderful narrative poem with great historical context. Thank you.